Hello friends, welcome to next blog in RAG GenAI series. This blog series is for beginner and young entrepreneur who want to build and get started with RAG-based GenAI applications. In today's blog, we are going to cover one very specific topic, how to build, host, deploy, and serve a functioning web application. And this is not going to be an ordinary web application. It's a RAG-based GenAI hosted application. It's going to take user input and is going to answer that question based on LLM models using your RAG data. We are going to cover two specific UI applications. One is the OpenWebUI, which looks like this, and other is the Taipy based web application, which provide you chat kind of interface. I'm going to use Taipy to build my graphical user interface, which looks like this. Before we start building our web UI, I want to call out that I will make references to some RAG GenAI beginner videos I posted recently. Now in this playlist, you'll find videos about how to set up Ollama, llama, RAG, vector databases from embeddings and generate tokens, etc. You can watch these videos on my X handle ashuklax or on my YouTube channel amit.shukla. So let's get started with the code. You can either clone the GitHub repository or just follow along. So here I am inside my Ubuntu terminal here, and this is the repository I was referring to. As you can see, if you look at the folder structure of this repository, there are a couple of folders you will find: autoresponder, help desk, manual fly, etc. Now let me just I have cloned this repository already, so let me just browse to that. And here, as you can see, I have the similar structure here. So let me start out first. First thing I want to do, I want to activate the virtual environment. If you don't have that already, please consider creating a new virtual environment. Once you have activated your Python environment, you can either say pip show and name of the package, or just say pip list and show the number of the packages installed. So first thing we want to install is an OpenWebUI package here. So let's go browse to that website. So just search for OpenWebUI. Once you are on their website, please go through the documentation. So let me just click on documentation, and this is the interface you can expect. So if you click on the documentation one more time, all right. So here you will find all the installation instructions. So if you are looking for a separate standalone kind of installation, you can always use Docker. So please, copy paste this command in your terminal window, and you will have a Docker. You will have a OpenWebUI running on your Docker installation. But here, because we are using our own virtual environment, I'm just going to copy this command, pip install OpenWebUI. I already have this installed, so I'm not going to do this one more time. But one more thing I want to call out here, as of now, as of today, this only works with Python 3.11. So please be careful, please be mindful when you're working on that. And once you have that installed, next command you want to say OpenWebUI serve. And you can also pass the host as a parameter, port as a parameter. So this is how you serve your application. You simply issue the command OpenWebUI serve and pass your host name. Your host could be an IP address. So once you hit the enter, it's going to start serving that application on that particular IP address, whatever you mention here. So here, because I want to serve it on localhost, I'm just going to say OpenWebUI serve. By default, it serves as localhost 8080, and it will ask you to create an account. Let me just make it a little bigger so that you can see. And this is the interface you can expect. And here, as you can see, by default, it gives you a number of different models you can play along with. And some of these models are actually supported by OpenAI or Grok, GROQ, not the X version of GROK. All right, but because we want to build our own application, we want to build a chatbot which accesses our existing local premises RAG vector database and answers the questions based on that RAG database. Also, like OpenWebUI, don't underestimate that there's a lot of functionalities built in. You can upload your PDF in this format, and also it lets you play with your RAG database as well. But we are going to, just for the simplicity, we are going to use another version of the implementation, which is Taipy, Taipy. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But let's go to their website. If you go to their documentation, you will find there's a tutorial section, and under tutorial section, there is a gallery. Now, if you visit that gallery, you will find tons of very useful application here. And one of this is LLM chatbot. So we are simply going to make use of this chatbot, and we are going to customize this code so that it can work on our RAG databases here. As you can see, it is very, very simple. It only expects two packages, Taipy and OpenAI. And here, since we are working our local version of RAG vector database, we don't even need OpenAI. All right, so let's get it started. I'm going to start out first so that you can implement it and you can follow along. All right, so first thing, I'm going to browse to my directory here, cd documents GenAI. Inside this directory, I'm going to create a new directory called chat app. So ls, let me say mkdir chat app. Or before we even do that, we want to activate our Python environment. So sorry, I forgot to do that. So on a Linux machine, you just say source bin activate. All right, as you can see, I have activated my virtual environment. Now I want to install that Taipy package here. Pip install Taipy. It's going to take a couple of seconds here. All right, so now I have that installed. Pip show Taipy so that you can see the version installed on my machine. So as you can see, I have 4.00 latest as of today. All right, now I want to create a new directory called chat app. Hit enter. Looks like I already have this directory. So let me cd into that. So cd into chat app. Okay, let me do the ls again. So as you can see, this directory is by default blank. There is nothing like, it's totally blank directory here. All right, so first file I want to create is called serve.py. It could be main.py, anything. This is your starting point of your Python application. So I'm going to create a file called touch serve.py and let me start writing code into that. So let's head out to see our example and start looking at their code. So first thing, as you can see, they have installed two packages, Taipy and OpenUI. We don't need the second one. So we already have that. Let's pass this. Let's go to the step number 2. And as you can see, it's importing two packages here, Taipy.gui. So GUI is like, it helps you create graphical user interface elements here. I'm going to remove OpenAI because we are not going to use that. All right, next thing what we need, let's go back to their example one more time. Okay, and they are here, as you can see, they have defined 3 different variables here. So context is nothing, is just a string. It's saying, and the context, conversation, and current user message, all 3 are basically just simple strings. So let's change them default values here. So I'm going to remove that, and here one more place, I think conversation. So these are the starting chat conversation, and here I'm just going to make it look like, it's my variables here. All right, so we have defined 3 different variables: context, conversation, and current user message. In later section, we'll see how these variables are used. But just to high level, this context we are going to pass to our LLM model. Conversation is just a running history of all the chats between a human and the LLM model here. And current user message is the most current user message. So that's how we are going to use these variables in later section. Let's go back to their code sample one more time. And this is client. They are creating an instance of OpenAI client, which we don't need that. Next step is we are going to need this function called request. So let me copy paste this here. And as you can see, read the signature of this request. Simply what this does, it accepts a prompt and it returns the results based on our OpenAI. So basically, because we are not using OpenAI ChatGPT here, we want to use our local RAG model here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment all of this for now. So let me just change the method signature again one more time, the documentation, and I'm going to comment all of this out. And instead here for now, I'm just going to return a simple string saying fake response or something like that. Let's call this is a fake response for Ollama, and we'll fix this later. All right, now let's go back here, and now we want to copy another function. So what this function does, because we are building a chat, so chat is, you need to take the conversation, current conversation, and you are going to push that conversation into the conversation array. So, and that's exactly what this function does. So let's go copy this function and paste it here, send message. And as if you read the signature of this, if you read the content of this message, you will see simply what it does. Whatever the answer or the prompt has been mentioned in the previous history, is just going to append it to the current existing state. All right, so now let's go back to our code one more time. So we have created functions here. Now let's go build a UI. And you can see this is so by default Taipy uses a markdown kind of syntax which helps you build the UI. It's very, very specific. So you have to know that Taipy is very simple. You just need to learn it, how to create GUI interface here. I'm not going to cover this in this video today, but let's just assume that this code, what it's doing is creating a graphical user interface for our application. And the last line we will need, and this is the standard line you will need in any Python application here. So if you want to execute this Python file as a script, then you need to, so suppose you're running it like, Python 3 and say serve.py, then this particular block of code will be executed. And that's what it means, if name equals to main. All right, so let's go back here. If name equals to main, what we want to do, we want to run this code. And this simply what this code does is going to create an instance of Taipy application, a web application. In actually underneath, this is a Flask application here. So it's going to start building that. Simply, I'm just going to change the title of this for now so that it looks like my application. So just to reiterate, is going to create a graphical user interface of the page. That means the markdown content what we have defined, and is going to run that. Run means is going to create, simply like, it's going to create an HTTP server instance, and you can also specify host and the port number here. Now let's go back to our terminal window and execute Python 3 serve.py. So it's going to start a HTTP server at localhost 8080. As you can see, this is like simply now you have a functioning web application serving at a localhost port number 8080 or whatever the port number you have defined. So as you can see, this is not very pretty looking, okay, and this kind of expected. So we just need to put some styling around that. So styling means like I just need to put some HTML cascading CSS styling so that it makes just to make it a little more pretty. Also, let me open a simple browser on my VS Code so that I can see it side by side. All right, so this is, as you can see, so there is also on the bottom right hand side, if you see, there is a Taipy inside. It's kind of a watermark. So I want to replace that as well. So I'll say watermark equals to, and let me do some self promotion here. Say youtube.com, amit.shukla. And now let's put some styling here. So as you can see, they have already defining by default CSS classes here. I'm going to copy this, and they are saying you need to create a new file called main.css. So let me save this first. Let me go to a terminal window. I'm going to kill that. I'm going to create a new file called main.css. So touch main.css, and the content I copied from their website. That means the cascading style sheet, and I'm going to paste it here. Let me save this, close this, save the serve.py, and let me restart my application. Now before I restart, I need to call that CSS file here. So if you go to the GUI, here you can define the CSS file what you have just created. So one of the parameters you can use CSS underscore file equals to main.css. Now let me save this, and now let's run this. Oh, I'm so sorry. I need to, I think I forgot one more method here, style conversion. So we have created a CSS file, but we have not included that CSS anywhere. So let's go define that CSS function here, and then let's use that function in that GUI element. So let's, you will see that what I mean. So let's copy this thing here. And this is the element, this is the markdown syntax, which is creating those conversation text boxes. So let me remove that. And here I'm going to call that row class name. Okay, now let's start that. Okay, sorry about that. Now if I serve this, now I should have a prettier looking website. Here, see, so now it is like much better looking here. So now let me ask a question saying answer this. And this is the fake response what we have hard coded. Let me move the screen a little bit so that you can see the right hand side of it. So already you can see all the text boxes, that means your prompt and the answers, now they are nicely formatted. All right, so if you made it this far, congratulations. Now you have a functioning working chatbot application working on your machine. Now let's move on to the part 2. So here we are going to build an application using a chat history. So in fact, we have created a chatbot, but we also want to retain the history. So we want this kind of user interface on our application. So now let's go to the number 2. And again, this is very, very simple. It's not that difficult either. Here, the steps are a little bit different. First, you will need here, as you can see in this application, is asking you to import the LangChain packages here, which we are going to totally ignore. We are not going to use any of those things. So let me just collapse all of these things just to recap. So we had a GUI section, we had a name, a script section, and then we defined 3 different definitions: request, send message, and style conversion. So because we wanted a chatbot here, simply what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the first function, request, and I'm also going to remove the second message saying send message. And the reason I'm doing that, because I'm just going to create a more sophisticated version of the same functions here. And actually, I don't think we need ever those 3 variables what we defined. Now let me define another method called query LLM. Let me comment this out. Define a new function called query LLM. So as you can see, it runs a LangChain version of that. I'm going to comment this out because ultimately we want our local RAG-based GenAI application serving the LLM model here. All right, now let's go define I'm going to copy the GUI variables here. So just like what we did in previous version, we are going to redefine those variables here. And here is a more sophisticated example. Here I'm creating one string variable, one is a list and other is a object, a dictionary object here. All right. And then we want to have, I think we need to redefine those functions what we just got rid of. But here we need to define one extra method called create conversation. For create conversation, just like the similar past method, what it does is accumulate the history of all the messages. All right, now let's go define one more method called send message. So send message is simply whatever user is going to enter is going to take that message and pass it to a function called query LLM what we have just created. So now let's go back. I think that's pretty much it. That's all you need. So we have defined a create conversation method which captures the history. We have defined a method called send message, and we need another method called reset chat. So at any given point of time, because you don't want to keep accumulating your messages here, so at one point you want to give user an option if the user wants to reset the chat. And simply what this function does is just going to clear out the state of the messages here. So let's go define this one more message here saying reset chat. As you can see, it simply resets the value of the messages. All right, let's go back to this one, and we need to redefine our GUI because we want to include a button on the left hand side. I'm just going to copy this, and simply what I'm going to do, because we don't need this, so I'm going to comment this whole section. No, this is the old GUI. So let me just say old graphical user interface. Now if you're happy with that, please you can still keep on using that, but I'm just going to show you more advanced version of this. Now let's go copy the newer version of it, and simply actually I want to retain those values here, the title and the host and port and watermark. So let's go back here, and I'm going to include those back into that run parameters. Save this. Now it looks good. Okay, we also need CSS file. So let's go to our GUI, and along with page, I'm going to pass the CSS file as a parameter here. And I believe I also need to update my style sheets. So now let's go copy the new style sheet elements here. Copy. Let's go back to our main.css. So I'm going to save this. Control C, code main.css. Main.css, and here inside that main.css, I'm going to update this with the newer style sheet elements here. Now let me save this one more time, and let's run this. Sub.py. We got some error, repeated title. So let's go look into our code. Okay, we have got title repeated here. So I'm going to get rid of the first instance of the title. It's duplicate. I want to retain the second value here. So let's go delete this. Save this. Let's run this one more time. So now it's complaining about TGB. Oh, because we didn't import that. So let's go back to the very beginning of their documentation. So I think I forgot one import. So import Taipy. Okay, we are building the Taipy GUI builder. So let's go import that's TGB. So go back to the beginning. Now save this, and let's run this one more time, and hopefully it should be working now. All right, as you can see, we have got a working version. Let's test this out. So I'm going to pass a test message here. As you can see, it got a very nice looking GUI interface here, and it returned my response, fake response. This is exactly the GUI I wanted to achieve. So now we have got all the GUI version completed. Now let's go start working on our RAG application. So remember, this is the function where I'm returning the fake response. Now is the time to fix it. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I'll be making quick references to this video series here, especially the part 3 and part 4, where I've covered how to create data tokenization and how to create embeddings of this data and store it into a database like ChromaDB or SQLLite or any VectorDB of your choices here. You can find these videos in the highlight section on my X handles, and also if you go to YouTube, you'll find the same videos here. Also, you can find the same code into my GitHub repository. So let's just go to GenAI, and there's a folder called Manualify. Now, if you look at this notebook, all of these things, like starting from working with data, creating tokens, creating embeddings from CSV, storing those embedding tokens into vector database, I have covered everything on that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make references to that, and basically this is a very, very simple code. Please go through this video tutorial, otherwise the next step may not make sense to you. So, but again, I'm just going to recap anyway. So now let's go back to this function. Two things you will need. First thing, you will need a ChromaDB, the vector database, and the LLM model, which is hosted a lot on Ollama. So I'm going to import two packages here, import ChromaDB and import Ollama. Next step is inside your query LLM definition packages here, I'm going to create an instance of ChromaDB, and I'm going to start that ChromaDB as a persistent client. Now remember, in last video we already have a vector database. It's called OLVectorDB. So I'm going to give that part to that. So now we have a client. Client is a reference to the ChromaDB database collection here. Now I'm going to access a collection. Collection is a group of record. Think about it in a schema. So I'm just going to say client.get collection, and I'm referring to a collection, say docs. Now let's pretend that we are asking a question called prompt. How are arguments and key arguments are defined in Python? Okay. Suppose we are asking this question. So first thing is you need to take this question and generate embeddings out of that, because your vector database is storing embeddings. It doesn't have the text there. So you have to create the embeddings from the prompt and then compare those embeddings. That means query the embeddings to embeddings. So to create the embeddings, I'm going to use embedding model of the Ollama. So Ollama.embedding prompt equals to prompt. And as you can see, simply you query collection.query and pass that response embedding what you have just created. All right. So let's go response. Again, we have covered this thing in extensive detail in those videos here. So if you are having trouble, please refer to those videos. And here I'm just taking the first result set, and whatever the data come from the vector database, I'm going to store that into a variable called data. So I think that's pretty much it. So now this is how I have what I did. I took a prompt, I created an embedding, I queried the vector database, and I got my results. Now I need to create my ask my LLM models one more time and pass this data into that Ollama model here, and whatever the Ollama chat window is going to return, I'm going to pass it back to the user. So let's go. Again, we have covered this. Sorry, I apologize if you find it a little difficult to follow along, but this is simply, whatever the chat vector database results came, I am asking Ollama model llama 3.2 again that, hey, can you take this data and nicely format it and answer this question. So one more thing, I think prompt needs to be dynamic. So I'm going to comment this out, and either I can just say query message equals to prompt, or prompt equals to query message, or just let's go to the change the definition of the function. So instead of saying, so either what I'm trying to just instead of query message, just say prompt here. Okay, or let me just get rid of this and say prompt here. Sorry to make I want to avoid making any confusion here. Okay, so whatever the prompt I am getting passed here, let me comment this out as well. I'm going to take that prompt, create embeddings out of it, query my vector database, and whatever results I get, I want to ask my Ollama chat to generate a response for me. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. There's one more thing I want to call out here, that the Ollama provides a couple of other methods. So along with the chat method, there's another method called generate. So let me show you that method as well. So I'm going to copy this content of chat. Let's copy this, copy the response as well, and simply I just want to demonstrate that there's another version. So I just say response equals to Ollama.generate. Okay, instead of say chat equals to generate, and generate, the signature of the generate is a little bit different. It accepts a model and it also accepts a prompt. So prompt could be any formatted string, and here simply you can say using this data. Now this is the data we just got from the vector database and responds to this prompt, and pass prompt as a So this is a simpler version of the of doing the same thing. So again, just in a nutshell, what we did, we created a function which dynamically accepts a question in format of in a form of prompt. It creates an embedding out of that, queries my vector database, and answer the question. So if I run this and ask a question saying, tell me something about Los Angeles. All right, now if I hit enter, so now it is going and asking that Ollama model, and it's going to exactly answer the question from LLM using an LLM model, llama 3.2 in this case. All right, so that's all I wanted to achieve in this video today. I wanted to show you how you can create an web application which uses your RAG GenAI based application, which is 100% locally hosted in your machine. So there's also another aspect of it, like tools and function callings, which I have covered in last video. And the use case of using tools and function calling is now you can build very sophisticated RAG GenAI based applications. So using tools and function callings, you can call your API to check the weather, or you can access your SQL database here. Now sky is the limit. So you can use your own RAG GenAI locally hosted database and answer the create a chatbot out of that. So that's all I wanted to achieve in this video today. But this is a very basic video. The whole reason is this is a beginner friendly series. But in future, I just want to show you what the next steps are. So now since I'm done with the basics, now you can create very sophisticated professional applications. So for example, local OCR Vision AI or help desk automation, time expense monitoring, and we are going to build all of this application in future videos.